I ignored my husband so much that he went away without telling me. I, Carla, 30, am 6 months pregnant with mine and my husband's, Harry, 31's, first child. During this pregnancy, I've been very exhausted every day and would usually come home from work and go to bed an hour later. Then I'd wake up at midnight and reheat what Harry had made us for dinner. For context, I've been part of a huge work project that's been going on for months, and I've been extremely overworked. On top of this, my husband doesn't have a job at this moment and isn't looking for one unless I remind him.
Ugh, red flag.
I've been working overtime to get as much money as I can before maternity leave. Our anniversary was on the 6th of August, and I'd asked him if we could have a romantic dinner at home and then snuggle up to watch TV under a warm blanket.
Oh my God, that is my dream.
I thought it was a wonderful idea since I was too tired to go out and because I knew that Harry was doing most, if not all, of the household chores. However, he seemed a little annoyed when he agreed, but I thought nothing of it. The next morning, Harry seemed quite cold towards me and barely looked me in the eyes. Once I got home from work, he wasn't there, but that was normal, since he could have been out with his friends or at an interview, and so I went to sleep. I woke up at 11 that night to see that I was still alone in the house, so I checked my phone. I had about 8 missed calls from Harry and a long text. I'm summarizing, but the text read, "I understand how tired you are because of this pregnancy and you having to work extra hours most days, but I'm over being ignored every day and having a 5-minute conversation with you every so often. You expect me to do all of the housework and plan our boring anniversary alone? I'm really annoyed, so I'm staying at a friend's tonight. Text me when you see this." Of course, I called him and texted him about being sorry and wanting to talk, but I never got an answer. In the morning, I called my boss about having a day off and spent most of it waiting for Harry and planning my apology. However, when he came home, he silently handed me a rose and a card saying that he loves me, but needs a few days away from me to figure out what he's going to say/do. Then those days became a week. This part happened on the 13th, 8 days later. I messaged him every day and he would constantly say that he needed one more day or just another night at his friend's to figure all of this out. But on the 13th, I decided to go to the friend's home he was staying at to confront him.
He's not there.
So I drove over 30 minutes away and banged on the door so hard that I could hear it echo from inside. By this point, I realized that I should have put more effort into our relationship, but he also should have talked to me about this instead of running away.
Agreed.
Harry's friend came to the door and was confused but pleased to see me. He seemed a little on edge as I talked to him, and he had to break the silence every so often with comments about my pregnancy and how he couldn't wait to meet the baby. Finally, we stopped talking and I practically demanded to see Harry, saying that I wanted to apologize but also explain how childish he was being by hiding from me. The thing that I found absolutely hilarious, but actually not at all, was that his friend said that Harry wasn't there and had left for Ireland on the 9th. Ireland! To say I was absolutely beyond furious and extremely confused would be such an understatement. His friend invited me in and sat me down to talk. Turns out that Harry had told his friend all of our problems and had come up with a solution of going on a holiday as a couple to sort everything out and learn to love each other again, in Harry's words. So, of course, his friend thought that this was a lovely idea and helped him book the flight on the evening of the 5th. The first time he had stayed at his friend's house. Since it was last-minute booking, Harry's friend had stayed up with him for quite a while before they found a flight who was taking a few more passengers due to canceled tickets. His friend then explained how he'd been confused when I arrived at the door, but didn't want to say anything about the holiday in case it ended early due to us arguing. Harry's return ticket is booked for the 20th of August. I'm just so angry and quite heartbroken, to be completely honest.
Homeboy's still in Ireland as we're recording.
Yep. I messaged him the moment his friend had finished talking, and Harry only responded an hour ago with nothing more than a, quote, "had to figure things out, sorry."
Honestly, I wish he was like top of the morning. Like, just fucking own it, bitch.
So now I'm home alone again and trying to figure out what I'm going to say/do when he gets home. Anyways, thanks for reading about how my life is going.
I hate him. Men, once more, ain't shit.
My parents used my inheritance to buy my stepsister her dream car. Luckily, it ruined their life. Story time. So my life was great when I was a kid. I had a mum and dad that loved me. And I wasn't spoiled, but I never really lacked anything. And overall, it was a very, very healthy childhood. Things turned around when I was 15. So my parents ended up getting a divorce, and by the time I was 17, my mum had already remarried. And in addition to a new stepfather that I didn't want, I got the stepsister that I didn't want either, and she was 14. Obviously call her Amy. And please trust me when I say this is the nicest way I'm going to say this. She is the biggest spoilt brat I have ever come across. I would rather die than be around that little devil. Giving rat. Was and still is one of the most manipulative people I have ever met. She will not stop until she gets what she wants. If there was a toy she wanted growing up, she would scream and cry until she got what she wanted. And then as soon as this got home, she just wouldn't play with it. She'd neglect it, she wouldn't play with it at all. It became very clear that she would just ask for things to prove that she could get them and I couldn't get them. Really knew how to push buttons, let me tell you that. I think as she got older, maybe she gets better. No, she actually just gets worse. Okay, so let's get into the recent events now. For her 18th birthday, she demanded that my parents buy her a new car. But she wouldn't settle for anything small, she wouldn't settle for anything used or secondhand. She wanted something big, something that says, I'm here. She just had to have the new BMW 430i convertible, which if you don't know what that is, it's quite expensive. And initially my parents were like, no, you're not having that, because they just couldn't afford it. But, you know, I've got to give it to Amy. She just does not let things go. Just know that I don't like this eyeshadow look. She made their life a living hell until she got what she wanted. One day, I wake up and this brand new BMW is sat in my parents' driveway. And let me tell you, I was bloody fuming. But to be honest, more than anything, I was just wondering how the hell my parents had afforded this. I hate this eyeshadow so much. Like, my family are by no means rich, and this car costs like over 60 grand, so not really too sure where we're getting this dollar from. So I decided to open the conversation and I asked my mum how she'd been able to afford this for my sister. And this poor woman just literally broke down in front of me. And that was when she told me that she had used my inheritance money to pay for the car. And this was when I decided that this would be the last time my parents were going to prioritise my sister over me. So I'm thinking, girlies, it's revenge time. So I get my sister and my mum and stepdad to come to a fancy little restaurant with me. For a fact, my sister wouldn't come unless we were going somewhere that was expensive. I literally hate this makeup so much. What am I doing? So we're at the restaurant. We're actually having quite a nice time for once. And then I decided that I wanted to speak to my parents and my sister all together about my inheritance. And as soon as I bring it up, Amy gets up and just leaves. Bye. So on the way home, my sister got into a really bad accident in her brand new BMW 430AB, whatever the bloody hell the car's called. The car was a write-off. And since the crash was my sister's fault, my parents, because they were paying for everything, had to pay thousands of pounds in premiums. And it's now been 3 years and my parents are still in debt. Wow, okay, that's makeup. I hate this makeup. So they're still in debt after they sold their house. My sister had to drop out of college, or like not in a good place, and my sister's fallen into some really unhealthy like habits, which I won't go too much into. And at this moment in time, I haven't spoken to them in years, nor do I intend to. Oh, this is the worst face of makeup I've ever done. I hate every single thing about it and I'm so sorry.
My best friend cheated on her boyfriend, so I invited them both over to dinner without telling them that the other is coming, and it was the biggest mistake of my life. My best friend Jess cheated on her boyfriend a few weeks ago and she has been inconsolable about it ever since. She states that it was just a dumb mistake on a drunken night out and that she can barely even remember cheating, and therefore should be forgiven. It hurts to see my friend in such a state, as she really did love her boyfriend. Her boyfriend Chase, on the other hand, as soon as he found out about the cheating, he was told by Jess' friend, he broke up with her immediately and is refusing to give her a second chance. I have been in my friend's corner throughout this all, obviously. I have really been trying to help her win Chase back from the sidelines, but I've never talked to Chase myself. I have been there with her while she tries to call him, or as she creates new accounts to try to get into contact with him, and it's hard. There are times I just want to tell Jess to give up and stop trying, but then I remember how beautiful their relationship was and why she was trying so hard. There had been a few bumps in the road, such as her drinking, which she perhaps does too often, but she has been working on it with his help. And me remembering that is exactly what sparked my idea in the first place. I had a thought to myself, where I pondered about what would happen were I to invite them both over to dinner, without telling them that each other is coming. Chase is a mutual friend and I have no doubts he would come over. I also stumbled upon this exact scene in The Simpsons with Apu and Manjula, and considering they got back together at the end of the episode, I figured why not give it a shot. 2 days ago I contacted them both separately, and invited them over for dinner the next day. I told Jess I just wanted to spend time with her. And I told Chase that Jess was being secretive about what she had done and why you ended the relationship, and I wanted to find out from the source. They both accepted and my plan was underway. The next evening they came over. Well, Jess showed up first, a few minutes before she was supposed to arrive, and we started chatting away. Then the doorbell rang a few minutes later. Jess looked confused and I told her that I had invited someone else over for dinner. It was of course Chase. I welcomed him in and he walked into the kitchen to see Jess. As soon as he saw Jess he began yelling, "What the F? You invited me here to surprise me with this beach whose legs are spread more than a hook RS on a Saturday night, what the F, and he went to turn around and walk out. I rushed over to him, of course, and tried to get him to calm down. But he wasn't having any of it. He went to put his jacket back on and walk out, all while Jess was yelling over him, but I stood in between him and the door and told him that he is not leaving here until he has a normal and civil discussion with Jess, and where they can reach some sort of compromise. Chase, seeing that there was no way out, gave in. He sat down at the table, but refused a portion of dinner. Jess refused too, so I was eating alone. From my immediate first impression, Jess seemed more thrilled about this plan of mine than Chase did, but I was doing it for his own good too. Slowly but surely I pried Chase open and got information out of him and did my best to sway him into forgiving Jess, and I truly thought it was working at one point. But at some point throughout the talk Jess said, "Why can't you forgive me like last time?" Something clicked in my head. Last time? I asked Jess. She seemed caught off guard immediately, and began stumbling over her words. Chase then budged in. "Oh, she hasn't told you, has she? She cheated on me before and I forgave her." My eyes flew open and I asked Jess if it was true. She started crying and admitted that she had cheated before on Chase, and this was the second time she was begging for forgiveness from him. When I asked her how could she not tell me this, she replied saying she was too ashamed and proceeded to leave immediately, still in tears. Chase sat there looking smug, and he asked me if I was done. I told I was sorry and that I didn't know, and he replied saying that me doing this was the dumbest thing ever. He left shortly after too, but before he did he said that he had to go check on her to make sure she doesn't off herself. I asked him what he meant and Chase told me that Jess, a few months prior, had told him if he ever leaves her she will end herself as he is the only good thing in her life. I asked him if he thinks she meant it, and he said most likely not, but advised me to reach out to her to make sure she doesn't do anything stupid. That's what I've been trying to do, but I've had no luck yet. I'm really worried for Jess. My best friend cheated on her boyfriend, so I invited them both over to dinner without telling them that the other is coming, and it was the biggest mistake of my life. This is certainly not an update I ever thought I was going to be making. These last few weeks have been the hardest few weeks of my entire life. Chase wasn't lying when he told me that my best friend Jess might take her life. I tried reaching her over the phone for the next day after my original post, and I ended up driving down to her house, and lo and behold I did not find her there. I called her parents and they did not know either, neither did any of her siblings. I called Chase and asked him if he had seen her by any chance, and he said that he has been trying to reach out purely to make sure she's okay, but she has not responded to him either. I was so worried at this point that I ended up calling the police. By this point it had been over 24 hours since anyone had seen her or been able to get into contact with her, and she was declared a missing person. I stayed hopeful, but the next day I got the most heartbreaking call of my life. It was Jess' mother. She called me in tears, and I kept asking her what was going on, all while telling her it's okay and to relax. The very first sentence she said was, "They found Jess, she took her life." My world exploded at that moment. I stayed on the phone with Jess' mother for what seemed like eternity crying. The funeral was held 5 days later. Chase showed up to it, and me and him spoke a little. He told me he feels an incredible amount of guilt and he really has no way of dealing with it. He revealed to me that Jess' other friends have been bombarding him and trying to get him fired for making Jess take her life, and I consoled him. This is just as hard on him too. It's been 2 weeks since the funeral and Chase and I keep in touch regularly. He's actually moving into mine until he can get back on his feet. The harassment ended up getting to him. And his address was leaked by one of Jess' friends and he needs a safe place to stay. I'm pregnant and my alcoholic boyfriend is threatening to take our child away after birth despite the fact that he's abusive. My boyfriend is currently threatening to take our child away after a bad fight which we had. He has a bad temper and we have been fighting more often since I got pregnant 12 weeks ago. These fights can get explosive especially when he drinks, which he does a lot. Since I've been pregnant he has screamed at me, threatened to hurt my dog and my cat because they don't behave like he thinks they should. He punches things when he is angry or slams doors. He slammed the sliding glass door so hard the other night that it stopped closing all the way. He has also threatened to sock my belly and pushed me stomach first onto the railing many times, but has never actually gone through with it. Usually these fights end with me crying and him falling asleep. He will apologize the next day once he sobers up. Well, tonight was the worst I have ever seen him. We both work for the same company and I set up an event which he volunteered to work at. Everything was fine all day until the end of the day. He called me to say F you, and that if I ever set up another event he will leave me and take our child. He called me again later to pick him up because he and his ride got into an argument where they both almost got arrested because my boyfriend initiated a fist fight. He was over an hour away from me, but I still drove there. When I arrived, he refused to get into my car. He started berating me and calling me and my entire family horrible names. He told me to get a termination because the baby will end up like me. I ended up leaving after a full hour because he refused to come with me. Then he was mad because he couldn't find a hotel to stay in and I left him. He got an Uber home and started grabbing all of his stuff. While grabbing his things he pushed me into the wall and told me he's going to take me to court. Then he said he will win custody of our child. He makes significantly more than me, and he used this to call me broke and unfair to care for a child at home, saying that the court will rule in his favor and I will never see our kid again. I recorded him while he was yelling at me tonight. Can I use this as evidence?
What's it like to go to therapy? Going to therapy is like opening your eyes after only 4 hours of sleep. You don't want to wake up because you're tired. It's like forcing yourself to get out of bed even though you have zero energy. It's uncomfortable. The feeling of dread sits on your shoulders and you wait for it to be taken off. Going to therapy is like showering, getting ready, cooking a meal for yourself and then sitting down to eat it. It's self-care. Going to therapy is like stepping outside for the first time in days. It's refreshing. Seeing a therapist is like making an appointment with your future self. You get to know your potential. Going to therapy is like having someone hit you in the chest with a bat, making all of your darkness spill. It's the most vulnerable you'll feel. But it's necessary. Going to therapy is to challenge your thinking, your beliefs, your habits, and choices. Going to therapy is the first step to healing.